Hi, my name is Katie Harvey, and I am a Global and International Studies major with a focus in political science at the College of Worcester. My independent study focuses on multinational corporations and international environmental regime effectiveness. I first became interested in this topic with learning about the case of ozone depletion in DuPont chemicals. In the mid-1970s, scientific consensus was reached that the depletion of the Earth's ozone layer was due to ozone-depleting substances, or ODSs. DuPont, as one of the leaders in the chemical industry, thus represented one of the largest single contributors to the destruction of the ozone. In the early 1980s, when global efforts began by nations and other international organizations to find solutions to the rapidly deteriorating ozone, DuPont shocked the world by lobbying in support of the regulation of ODSs. In the late 1980s, the UN saw the passing of the Vienna Convention and the Montreal Protocol, which established global regulations on the classes of ozone-depleting chemicals. DuPont's stance inspired other powerful chemical firms to support the regulations and inspired the global move away from ODSs. Today, the ozone has begun its recovery. In 2018, the World Meteorological Organization published their estimates that the Earth's ozone would return to pre-1980 levels within the next 40 years. The case of DuPont and the stratospheric ozone regime demonstrate that although international firms have historically been some of the largest contributors to environmental degradation, the immense power of capital in a globalizing world presents a unique opportunity for corporations to become drivers for positive global environmental change. This project seeks to understand the conditions under which international environmental regimes are most effective. And based on the case of DuPont and the stratospheric ozone regime, it seems possible that the success of international environmental regulation could be impacted by economic actors or considerations. In order to understand the role that large businesses like DuPont can have in the crafting, implementation, and outcomes of global environmental governance, scholars are actively studying the overlap of policy, economics, and ecology. With a base in political science, this paper continues its exploration by asking the following question: how does an international environmental regime's relationship to the economic marketplace affect its institutional and ecological effectiveness? In order to tackle this question, I look to definitions from the relevant literature. Firstly, an international environmental regime is considered a convergence of principles, norms, rules, and decision-making procedures in a particular ecological issue area. Next, the project uses David Levy's characterization of the regime relationship to the economic marketplace as either being regulatory or market enabling. Regulatory regimes restrict the actions of economic actors through imposed rules or norms. Market-enabling regimes, on the other hand, create opportunities for economic actors to expand or continue business operations. Finally, regime effectiveness is defined in two capacities. Firstly, institutional effectiveness refers to the institutional functionality of the regime, including actor behavior change and compliance. Ecological effectiveness, on the other hand, uses indicators of ecological change, which might include CO2 emissions or species biodiversity. I utilize a most similar comparative case study where I choose 4 cases of similar caliber to analyze the variables of interest. The first 2 cases were market enabling, namely the stratospheric ozone regime and the climate change regime. The second 2 cases represented strictly regulatory regimes, the global oceanic regime and the biodiversity regime. I investigate the historical context, market interactions, and regime outcomes of these 4 cases in my study. Contrary to what the theoretical argument laid out in the start of the project, the presence of market-enabling characteristics does not necessitate regime effectiveness. However, there are still interesting lessons to be taken from this project. While both the climate change regime and the stratospheric ozone regime had market-enabling mechanisms, the stratospheric ozone case was the only one to see significant ecological effectiveness. This fact coupled with the research analysis of the other 3 cases, seems to suggest that it is the cost of these market-enabling opportunities, not merely their presence, that has the power to prompt changes in the behaviors of industry actors in response to environmental regulation. Further than this, the collective of case studies also points to the importance of 3 other considerations. Firstly, the substitutability of technology. Secondly, legal enforcement mechanisms for the regime. And finally, the nature, namely the complexity or fragmentation, of the environmental issue at hand. I give endless thanks to my mom, Kim Salazar, for opening the door for me to be able to complete a project like this. My advisor, Dr. Valdez, thank you for providing me with perspective and pushing me to do more than I ever thought possible. My second reader, Dr. Crane, you have inspired my passion for international relations, and I cannot thank you enough for that. And the rest of my support system at Worcester, from the lacrosse team to admissions to my roommates, I have the most wonderful group of people surrounding me. And thank you to whoever is watching this. If you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out, and have a lovely day.